All right, so unethical behaviors by educators. What is ethics? Responsibility that we accept when making a decision to be teachers. When we apply for a teacher's license, we obviously make a decision to agree to that. Educators are held at higher standards than others. Should educators be held at higher standards, and why? So a few things that are just kind of prevalent when talking about unethical behaviors. Inappropriate sexual behavior with students. We know that happens a lot. According to a 2004 Department of Education report, 1 in 10 students experience a school employee sexual misconduct. So thinking about a class of 30, 3 kids in there say that before they graduate high school, they experience a school employee sexual misconduct. This leads to the Amy Hester Child Protection Act. What that is just making it mandatory that if us as teachers know that something's going on, that we report it and investigation has to happen from the school district. That creates Aaron's Law, which we have to go through every year. Also makes background checks a little stronger and penalties stronger for teachers with recorded sexual abuse. So before this law was passed, they didn't really go into that a whole lot, and teachers could still teach if they had sexual abuse in their background. Now they can. And then also a mandated creation of a new district level communication policy and a state level restriction on website use. So that kind of leads me into the next section, which is a huge topic right now, very controversial, social media of teachers. So I thought this was a cool graphic, which compares the overall use of social media to the use of social media by educators. So I thought it was kind of cool that like the blue is overall and the red is educators, and not necessarily for an education aspect, just like what percent of educators versus what percent of overall population has social media. So I thought it was cool that Pinterest obviously was the biggest difference, so much on Pinterest for educators, but even like Facebook, which is not super educational, lots more. We're looking at like almost 90% of educators have Facebook, where 60-ish% of overall U.S. population have Facebook. So social media policy. A lot of districts across the nation are having educators sign a social media policy. And one of the things that is kind of happening is people are saying, a lot of educators are saying that this is affecting their First Amendment right of free speech. So what do you guys think? Like, is this taking away a teacher's First Amendment right?
I say that it is taking away a teacher's First Amendment right when that teacher is not on duty as a teacher.
Okay.
I think while I'm on duty as a teacher, I think the policies of my employer override my First Amendment rights. So I think after school hours and when school's not in session, I think that's my private Facebook, and I ought to be able to post whatever I want to post. Now, I do think there is a double standard, and I think certain groups of people are allowed to post whatever they want to post, while other groups of people are not allowed to do that. So that's just me.
So that kind of leads into my next question. How strict should the district be allowed to be when talking about off-duty postings? So obviously, like we're saying on our Facebook, okay, I work at Childersburg Middle School for Talladega County School District, but then even though I'm off duty at 9 o'clock on a Friday night, I'm posting a picture of me drinking in a bar. So should that be, I'm saying that I work for this school district, so I'm still representing them, even though at 9 o'clock on a Friday night, I'm not at school.
Yes and no. I say no because, even though I am a teacher and I am an educator, I am still a human being, and I still have a life, and I still have the right to live my life under the Constitution,
right?
The way that I want to live my life. However, on a more personal note, as a human being with some wits about myself, and more so as a Christian, I should have a more higher moral standard for myself than to be posting pictures of myself out drinking
Right.
at a bar. But I think that's an individual thing.
So you think it's more of like a personal decision? Anything else anybody wants to add to this?
Well, I think that even though I agree with him about when we're off duty, we should have certain rights to be able, First Amendment rights. But I know that as a teacher, people look at us in a different light. So even though we should be able to post personal things that we want to, we still have to understand that there are lots of children, lots of parents,
Right.
lots of community people who are watching us under a magnifying
So
glass.
we still should be setting a good example for the kids that we're teaching.
Yes.
Well, and I'll tell you one other thing to go along with that also, and this is a personal thing. I do not accept any student of mine on social media. If I get a friend request on Facebook from a student,
Right.
my answer is immediately decline. And in fact, I will not accept them as a friend on Facebook until they have actually graduated high school.
That's a really good point. Thank you for bringing that out. All right, so our last thing that we're going to talk about is the last unethical behavior that we see a lot in education, and that's cheating on state assessments. So I kind of took this in a little bit of a different direction, kind of looking at the accountability of a state assessment because there's so much emphasis put on these state assessments. So how much accountability should there be on one single form of assessment? So I found this graphic, which I thought was kind of cool, showing your goals and your standards and then the assessment outcomes leading to the accountability support. And I thought this was cool because it leads accountability support back to the processes and inputs. So you need support in that. And that doesn't always happen. So the accountability consequences sometimes outweigh the support of the accountability. And then kind of why do teachers cheat on these state assessments? There's so much emphasis placed on the teacher to ensure that the students perform well on these high stakes assessments that they feel that they have to cheat to make sure that their students are where they need to be. So I just kind of like, how can we get teachers to not feel like there's that much emphasis on it? And I think one of those things is stop comparing apples to oranges. Like if we're comparing a school district in rural Birmingham to a school district, that's very different, how can we expect them to score the same on an assessment? And then also giving teachers extra support throughout the year and not testing as often, kind of takes some of the pressure away from not only the teachers, but the students. And when they do have that testing, or when they are forced to test, it doesn't seem quite as scary as it does in other times. So what do you got? Like, why do y'all think teachers cheat on state assessments? Like, what makes them feel like they need to cheat on a state assessment? Like we put so much emphasis on these high stakes, like we give them one assessment, one standardized assessment.
That's what I was going to say. There's a lot of pressure for your students to perform proficient
Right.
on these high stakes end of the year assessments. A lot of pressure. And so I think that's probably the main reason that it's almost like, if your kids don't perform, then it makes it look like you're not doing your job.
Right. So do you think that if we gave assessments, not necessarily like a standardized assessment, like a state assessment, but like kind of formatively assessing statewide throughout the year would be better than this one big summative assessment at the end of the year?
Maybe, or even twice a year, a semester. Some sort of benchmark or.
So that it's
or
not
assessment.
just, you have one test to prove whether you
Right.
know it or you don't.
Yes, and it puts a lot of anxiety on the students too.
Right.
And so,
So maybe one reason is like, we want, as teachers, we want to make our students feel more comfortable. So we want to say, okay, I'll help you a little bit. It's all right.
maybe.
I'll give you a little bit of extra support while you're testing. So that our kids aren't as stressed out about it. All right. And then references, this is where I got all my information. Anybody want to add anything else to our unethical behaviors of teachers? All right, great job. Thank you, guys.